Am I on? Look at who we have here. Hi, Dean. Hi, Deb. Hi, Connie and Sharon and Carol and Bonnie Haney all the way over in New York. Heather in Florida. Sharon up north. Jane from around the corner. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
So cool. It's nice. I think Dean and Sharon, is this the first time you're Zooming with us?
Oh no, I was there last month, I think.
Okay. I probably didn't get a good view of what was happening. Let's see, who else do we have? Hi, Deb. All right. Very exciting. Okay, and we have Deb with us. Florida, New York, Northern California-ish to us anyway. And Nancy, I think, is up in the mountains.
No, Sierra Madre.
That's the mountains to me.
Yeah, all right. I'll let you say that.
You're all the way up there. I think Betty here and I are the only ones from South County. So, who? Yeah, that's right. Deb's South County. So, anyhow, Deborah Shaw up there on my upper left is our presenter. And so we have a visual on everybody. Yeah. Except Jane. Well, that's fine. Jane doesn't have to put on her camera if she doesn't want to. Anyway, so welcome. We're missing a few people that are kind of late. Hi, Sherry. You made it. Who else? We got Greg here and a bunch of us. So we have a couple people coming in late, but we're not going to stop for that. I think we're going to go ahead and get chapter business done so we can get it over with. Let's see what my
They're so cute.
I moved my agenda, so of course it's not to hand. Anyway, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to. I don't care. Where do you want?
Gary's there.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, Connie.
Hi.
Yay. Well, okay. I broke the camera. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Okay. Well, it's probably better the other way, but never mind. All right. So glad you're all here. I'm really excited. We got lots of stuff going on and we're going to have to move it fast. Helen's not here yet. Website. Lupe and I got to look at a further iteration of the website. It's looking pretty snazzy. Do you agree? Did you get a chance to look at it? Yeah, we still need to add more members artwork, tweak a few things because it's being created in the UK. They've got the calendar set up a little differently. And we've got some more items to put into the calendar, but it's getting really close. Once again, from until 10:30, we're going to be doing business unless we can move it faster because it's going to take a bit of time to share the art and visit and raffles. You guys are all eligible for a $25 gift card, both in-house and on Zoom. So that's kind of exciting. And we have a few items that are donated for the in-house raffle. That's all I can think of up to Ruth. Are you ready for treasury report? Okay, hold on a minute. I'm going to give you the mic. I don't think you need to get up to be on camera.
Just dues, the raffle, and we sold several date books, which contributed to our income. And the only expense was the meeting venue. So anyway, our balance at this point is $2,286.01.
Great. Okay, I'm back again. I guess what I better talk about is pencil paintings. Do you want me to do that? Okay. Pencil paintings is coming up. Hopefully you've all gotten the MailChimp email on that. Take-in is the 4th. The artist reception is the 11th. We're shooting for 45 pieces of art. If you need help getting it here, hopefully Gary will be coming up from San Diego. I can make arrangements with the people up north. And, you know, maybe we can meet halfway. Okay. Okay. Ruth says if they can't make it the day of take-in on the 4th, that if they bring it to her, she can make sure that it gets processed. We'll be hanging immediately. We have lots of help for that, fortunately. Usually it's the board. Thank you all. Bunch of troopers show up and get these things hung up, and the judge will be there at noon to go ahead and judge. And so that's kind of exciting. Hopefully everybody's planning to put something in. Bonnie and Heather, I don't know what we do with you guys. That's kind of a pain unless you want to ship something small and light. I wouldn't want to make you do that. So that's all. If you have any questions, the email has Ruth's address. You can always send me a question, and you know, we'll do everything we can to make it so that you can enter, because the more the merrier. People, you know, we have a fabulous judge, and I'm hoping to knock her socks off, and I'm sure you guys will. I think she's going to be surprised. She's been a teacher for a long time. She's retired now, but I don't think she's seen anything like what we do. You know, she's had junior college level students and things like that. And so it'll be something. I'm sure she's going to enjoy that experience. Okay, let's see what else. Oh, I am going to bring up now, watch for the email about our workshop on March 18th with Catherine Hansen. If you have not seen her work, check her out. She's one of our members. She's fabulous. She also judged the San Diego Foothills Art Association Wildlife in Art show. And so she is really fabulous. We're going to do an owl. That'll be the subject. And that will be at the Cypress Community Center, same place where the show is going to be. And I just thought, Bonnie and Heather, we can video that show so at least you can see what's hanging. So that'll help. Anyway, so the workshop is the 18th. It'll be 9 to 4 on a Saturday. So watch for that email with the information. And for an in-person workshop, it's very reasonable considering what I just looked at today on the web for workshops. It's $100 from 9 to 4. And you will have your line drawing supplied to you, and you'll have a supply list so you can bring your own pencils. And that's all I can think of right now on that. So let's see. I think it's time for Karen to do membership. Okay. Okay, we're standing at 39. We have a few people that have said they're going to pay, but they're not there yet. And please talk to people wherever you go. If you belong to an art league, talk to them. We also have brochures. We should be able to give you those or send you those. And people can join any chapter. You know, with a Zoom, you can sit in on anything. I think Bonnie belongs to 4. 3 now, okay. So she gets to sit in on all the different goodies and the workshops and the, you know, presentations and things like that. So we, you get the benefit of a lot of education and fellowship, and that, you know, that's the best part. So enough on that. Okay. We are cranking right along. We're still missing a few people, but they'll be coming in shortly. So do we have everybody written down as far as, yeah. Okay, so we're going to do the Zoom raffle right now since we can. So hold on a sec. Okay. All right, Greg, why don't you, oh, sorry, Sherry. That eye doesn't work. Thank you. Okay. Deb Gargula pays to come to Zoom meetings. You won the $25 Blick gift card.
Oh my gosh.
Yay.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
You're
I'm
welcome.
kind of stunned. Thank you.
All right. So
Oh my goodness.
let's do it for the in-house people, if you don't mind. So we'll do the in-house people separately. And I am to the point where, what time are we?
10:14.
Good heavens. Well, since we're missing people, should we just proceed and let Deb do her thing?
Yep.
Mhm.
Deb can fill it. Oh, you know what? We are at the art share part. Sorry about that. Who brought art? Did you bring art, Sherry? Yes. Yay. Oh, and while we're doing that, can I talk about the chapter project? It's okay. I'm coming back. I'm coming back. No, you can sit and do your thing. I'm just going to come over here and talk about the chapter project. Right there? Okay, good. You're trying to get me to focus. Yep. Yep. Okay. So this, I doubt that you can see it that well, is the crude mock-up for our chapter display for Cincinnati. And the idea is that it winds up being a field of sunflowers.
Wow.
Can you bring me the flowers over there that by Ruth? There we go. Nope, nope, nope. They should be. Did I put them away? Oh Lord, my head. Yes, those are them. And there's two more. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the idea is to draw a sunflower of some type within a 4-inch circle. They're going to be mounted on dowels and they're going to go into the base of foam.
Cool.
So we'll wind up with a field of unique sunflowers. If you don't do sunflowers and you want to put a face in the middle of the sunflower, I don't care. The idea is to be creative and that everything will look different and no one will have anything like that. So that's the idea. What I can do is also email that document out so that you have a little clearer idea and can see what all the verbiage is. But I showed you that one. Betty's already done 2. Betty's an overachiever. And we like that.
When are they due?
Probably, yeah, June meeting would be great.
Okay.
So it'd be the first Saturday. You can also mail it to me.
Okay.
If you've gotten my emails and you still need my address, I can give you that. And Gail's already done one. I'm not sure if it can be seen. Yeah, there we go. Just got it in an envelope. So it's, ooh, pretty. Yep, a lot better. And last chapter display, it took us 2 years to actually meet in person. So let's see.
Date on sunflowers again?
Oh, she's frozen. Heather, can you hold yours up again? Oh, yay. Okay. Yep, that's what I'm talking about. Awesome. And obviously she's going to have to mail hers. So,
Due date on the sunflowers again?
for first Saturday in June. That would be the 3rd. Okay. Yep, you can mail it to me or come to that meeting and we will be styling. That'll give me plenty of time to get it mounted on the wood discs and put the fitting on the back to mount on the dowel. And the idea is that I can break it down and transport it without damaging it, and it'll all be light and easy to assemble. So it should be unique, which is kind of what we specialize in. All right, so now are we to the point where we want Deb to work? Did you want to say anything, Helen? Are we good? I talked about the website, but you can. I did ask for more pictures. Desperately, she says, which is right. But the basic framework is looking really nice and clean. Yeah, nice and clean. Yeah, yeah. So we are definitely getting there, and hopefully we'll be even more functional than we have been. So that's what I have so far. Now, Deb. Okay.
Thank
tired of
you.
talking.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here. It's wonderful. I will go ahead and share my screen. And we can talk about, let's see, color. Of course, it worked perfectly before.
Course.
And here we go. So this is, it's an color. Okay, color is an interesting thing. It's a topic that I love talking about because there are a lot of different ways to look at color. And I'm going to try to, I'll quickly run through all those different ways so we can talk about them. You'll have to excuse my voice. We were raking up the last of the sycamore leaves that came down when the Santa Ana winds were blowing. And so although that sycamore leaf dust is in my throat still. So forgive my hoarse voice here. Okay, and so we're going to start with a little bit about how we see color. So this starts off with a little bit about our eyeballs and brains. Every different species sees color differently. So for dogs, for example, and also for a lot of different types of primates, so many monkeys, they have only 2 types of color receptors in their eyes. Those that see green and those that see blue. So that means that they can see green, blue, and a little bit of yellow. For us humans, it's a little bit different. Most of us have 3 cones, and our cones are mostly responsible for really high resolution vision and our color vision. So we see red, green, and blue. And the red, green, and blue cones, they all work together to enable us to see the entire spectrum of colors that we can see. And I'll show you why that works in a little bit. Our rods are what are responsible for what we see in a lower light, so night and low vision light. And it also works for our peripheral vision as well. So the rods cannot see red. And if you've ever done color studies over the course of a day, like a landscape study, or, you know, what does the school bus look like when it's parked in a dark alley at night versus in the middle of the day. But what happens as the light level goes down, is the cones start shutting down and the rods are what pick up the light. And so, you know, you see on the captain's bridge of ships, everything will be in a red light so that it doesn't interfere with the captain's night vision. There are a few people, mostly women, who are what we call tetras. They're tetrachromats, and they have 4 cones instead of 3. And they are most likely to be people who have a father or a brother who is colorblind. So color blindness is estimated to be about 12% of the population, mostly men. And so their researchers are busy looking for people who are tetras. I know a couple of them. They have kind of a difficult life, so they can see more colors than the rest of us 3-coned people. But for instance, they can't stand, this one woman that I knew, she was an animator for Disney, and she couldn't stand to be in a room that was painted slightly different shades of white, because for her, they clashed horribly. And she couldn't walk into a grocery store or a lot of these other places where there is a lot of color competing against one another, because it was absolutely overwhelming for her. Now, some of us are learned tetras, so you can learn to start distinguishing between quite a few different types of colors. There are some insects that are blind or can distinguish between light and dark, but then others can see a lot more than what we see. And these range throughout, you know, the animal, insect, and fish kingdoms. Deer they don't see orange and red, so a tiger to a deer appears to be a muted shade of green. So if you've ever wondered how a bright orange and black striped tiger can be camouflaged in grass, it's because it blends to the deer's eyes. That tiger blends in with the grass. But reindeer can see ultraviolet, apparently. And they can even see urine and the ultraviolet that's emitted from power lines, apparently. So one of my very favorite animals of all time is the mantis shrimp. And the mantis shrimp has 12 different types of photoreceptors. Now, there's some new research that has come out about it that I need to read, that just came out recently about all these different photoreceptors. But each of their little eyes see 3D and can swivel and move independently. The mantis shrimp lives in warm water. So as you go deeper in water, you have a lot of blues and yellows that are apparent because those colors travel the furthest. But fish that live in shallow water have really good color vision. And the mantis shrimp has more color vision than everything else combined. They're really hard to study. It's another reason why they're kind of my favorite. You can't house them very easily in a lab or aquarium, even if you have really thick aquariums to keep them in, because they can move so quickly that they can create this underwater shock wave that they use to kill prey, but they can also use that to break through the thickest barriers. So they're very difficult to study. They're fairly small, but they're fierce, as well as seeing more color than everyone else. But okay, back to people. Our brains prioritize reds and greens when we look out at the world, which, you know, you can probably say is an evolutionary adaptation. You know, red might mean ripe fruit, I suppose. But part of our ability to see color has to do with language. So when researchers take a look at, generally speaking, if you take a look at males versus females, more females can name more different types of colors than men. So, that's not universally true. It depends on the person, but just as kind of a general rule within a population, that holds. And if you can name more different colors, you can differentiate more different colors. Our languages have different colors. Linguists who have gone back through history find that blue is the last color that's added to any language. And if you read through the Odyssey, the colors are naming things that are completely different. So the sea was wine colored and honey was described as green and iron was violet, but there was no mention of blue whatsoever in the Odyssey. As most of us get older and start developing cataracts, cataracts start shifting everything that we see towards the yellow end of the spectrum. And when I'm teaching, I can tell if someone has had cataract surgery immediately because their whole palette shifts from a yellow warm tone back to a brighter blue tone. And if you are a candidate for cataract surgery, usually they do one eye at a time. So I'm always interested to know, if you cover up one eye and mix colors versus the other eye, how are you seeing colors differently?
Right.
So here's the physics of what's happening. And I'll try not to bore you too much with all of this. But there are two different types of color, and additive and subtractive. And we use both of them on a daily basis, and they are at opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's important to understand when we're seeing which one. So additive color is everything that we see on a screen. Your smartphones, your computers, your TV screens, and they call it additive color because if you add the red, green, and blue together, the primary colors in this mode of seeing, you get white. So you have this white here in the middle. Now, when I teach like Photoshop and color correcting and things like that, it's always great fun to have traditional artists in the class because this is the color mixing model. So if you have your artwork scanned and you're trying to adjust the color on your computer, color mixing and color adjusting work completely differently than it does in real life. So here's what just drives people crazy if you're used to traditional color mixing. In this world of additive color on your screen, red and green mix together to form yellow. So this little chart over here on the side shows your red, green, blue, and then if you go across, it'll show you what you're mixing. So green and blue make a cyan color, and that is sort of makes sense to people, but mixing red and green to get yellow usually completely blows them away. Now, what most of us deal with when we're working with colored pencils on paper, or when you're looking at a printed brochure, or if you're painting, is what's called subtractive color. And this is cyan, magenta, and yellow. And the reason, and it kind of is backwards a little bit, but when you add these three colors together, you get black, theoretically. It's really kind of a murky color. So if you go to a quick printer or a very nice printer, they'll add black. So it'll be CMYK, and the K is for black, just to get that added little punch in there. But the reason it's called subtractive color is if you have a sheet of white paper down at the bottom and you color in a solid blue, let's say, What happens is the light bounces all the way through that blue to the paper and then bounces back. And all of the colors in the spectrum that are not included, they get absorbed, they don't bounce back. So what you see is a combination of colors that are coming back at your eyes and brain. So here's kind of what we're dealing with when we're trying to mix colors for our subject. This great big blob here is what the human eye can see. And if you look, this triangle here that has these long dashes, these are the colors that your monitor can put together. This little tiny dotted here blob is the CMYK model. And so this is what you can get when you take something to the printers. And this short dash blob here are Pantone colors. And so these are, think of them as the equivalent for house paints. They're used in the printing industry, and they're a color that gets mixed with pigment. So this short dashed line is very, very close to what we can get in colored pencils. What's really important is to look at all of this, especially the green, but all of these colors that are outside these white boundaries. These are colors that our eyes are seeing, but that pigments do not exist for us to mix and put down on our paper. So what we have to do in mixing colors is suggest all of these colors out here that will trigger that reaction in our viewers' brains. But you can see, especially greens are just very, very difficult to mix. This little bit in here are the greens that we can mix and put down on our paper. And all these other greens are things that we just can't get. So I'm sure all of you know the color terminology, but I want to point out that what people call primary colors, red, yellow, blue, are not primary colors, because you can actually mix red and you can mix what people call a true blue. So the primary colors in our world of putting things on paper are cyan, magenta, and yellow. Hue is what someone would answer if you ask, what color is that? Chroma is, that's a term that color people use to refer to the purity of the color or hue. And of course, value is how light or dark something is. Saturation is easy for watercolor artists because, you mix more water in and the color is the same, but it is less saturated. And then shades and tints, mixing white and black into things. Our brains see value more than they see color. And this is a really interesting concept. So a lot of times what we see, for instance, the bright orange sun, if you translate something into color, into black and white or grayscale, you can see what our brain instantly interprets. And this is why a lot of, like the German Expressionism with the wild colors for faces work just fine because our brain is interpreting those wild colors as what the grayscale values are. So for instance, in this one, you have that bright yellow chair, but that chair is pretty much the same grayscale value as her dress, right? And here is one of the what was considered bizarre color at the time. I love the reviewer quote, "The nastiest smear of paint I had ever seen," when this painting was shown. But here you can see once you translate it into a grayscale, which is what our brain recognizes right off the bat, it makes perfect sense. Whereas when you look at it in color, especially when it was exhibited in the early 1900s. It must have been completely shocking as what colors were used where, especially if you see this orange on her neck and you look at it in grayscale, it's not a dark color. So learning as we're working, learning how to interpret what we see in color into black and white is crucial. And that's probably the most important exercise in that ultimate color mixing exercise. Here's where it gets tricky. When I talk about color, there are lots and lots of different color systems. And there are people who have found the color system that they prefer, and they can use it to mix a color and can think about their subject instead of their color mixing. And that's great. I'm not saying that there is one color system that is the right one to use. It depends on what works for you. A lot of people know about the Michael Wilcox color theory system. And, you know, it's a 6-color palette. And if you mix like with like, in other words, a warm color with a warm color or a cool color with a cool color, you get a bright, clean color. And if you mix across the line, a warm color with a cool color, you get a grayer, more subdued color. I personally prefer different color systems. And the Munsell color system is based on hue, chroma, and value. So that works back to what we were talking about, the definitions before, but you have the various colors and then on this outer circle, and then how pure those colors are, and then the value of those colors. So it's more a color system that looks at mixing things to gray. The early 20th century, the color system that came out of the Bauhaus movement is generally the color system that we use today. And that has 12 different colors. And it was the first one to associate colors with different emotions. But this is the classic, you know, how you mix secondary colors and how you mix tertiary colors. And this is what most of us have learned, either growing up or with different classes. And it really focuses on contrast, you know, light and dark, warm and cool, how much of a color that you use versus another. But back to red not being a primary color. So this is with watercolor. I have some different examples with colored pencils also. But if you take your cyan, magenta, and yellow, which is shown here, you can mix a perfectly fine red. And I don't know how this is coming across on all of our different screens and your projector, but this is, on my screen anyway, a very true red. And this is what we would call a medium-ish blue, maybe a little bit towards a cobalt blue. So you can mix red and blue. Yellow is really the only color that you really can't mix. In the world of color printing, it's interesting to see what happens worldwide. There are a lot of like fine art books that are printed in Japan and in China. And what's interesting when you look at those is the cyan, they don't use a cyan, they use a slightly different blue to get a more representative color for artworks. This was sent to me by a friend in Japan, this little set, and I adore it for learning about color. It's a watercolor set, and it's used for color mixing class. And at the end here, at the far left, you have your red, yellow, cyan. But then all the other colors in the set show you by the size of the blob how much of these 3 colors is in each tube. So it's a great way to learn about color. You don't have these funny names that who knows who comes up with all these different names of pencils and paint. But you can see, for instance, this one has a lot of the cyan and a little bit of red. This one has an equal amount of magenta and cyan. This one here at the end underneath the cover has equal proportions of all three colors. And it's a great way to visually, instinctively begin to know how much of each thing makes up that color. But there are lots and lots and lots of ways to mix color. So you can match the color for whatever it is that you're looking at, obviously. So you choose whatever palette of pencils you need to make that color. And I do know a lot of artists who use, they have a little window cut out of a mask so they can isolate a color and really see it. You can layer colors, obviously. You can just use the cyan, magenta, yellow pencils and layer those on top of one another until you get the color you want. You can put different colors next to one another and let your eyeballs mix them like the Impressionists did. Lots and lots and lots of ways to mix color. The thing about mixing color is, there are a lot of color mixing classes where you make tons and tons of color swatches. And I'll show you some of my color pencil swatches in a little bit. The thing about those swatches is I found relying on them, especially with colored pencil, is that it would frequently lead me astray because it wasn't showing me what happens when you mix those colors with the other colors you might need for a particular piece of artwork. So it's when you mix all of those colors that are going to be in your palette that you learn about the actual color. And back in my days when I did a lot of work as a graphic designer and worked on color correcting and things like that, we would all play a game, out in the world, name that Pantone matching color or name that CMYK color, and then test it out just to get really good at recognizing what those colors were. And here, this is, so this is a prime example. It's like, okay, what pencils would you choose to mix that color to show this, this car and the reflective surfaces? Interestingly enough, our colors, the colors that we get in our color pencils are pretty much decided by the car industry. What happens is the big players industry decides what are going to be the new colors that everyone is going to be buying. They buy huge quantities of those pigments, and then people who manufacture art supplies get smaller quantities of those pigments. And so we're dependent on these industries for what pigments we get to use for our artwork. Then you also have things like politics and war and natural disasters. Daniel Smith had 17 years worth of pigment to make their quinacridone gold that they did, and in watercolor. And then they just plumb ran out. So, a lot of times I'll go and buy a new colored pencil or a new tube of paint, only to find that it's different than the old one that I had, which of course follows the rule that if you find an art supply that you dearly love, they will stop manufacturing it, seems to be the rule. But pigments are not consistent, nor are they certain. The other thing is the time of day. It's not only like cataracts and aging and everything else that affect our ability to see color. There was a famous case where a very large company whose product was a specific shade of red, found that internally the people who were doing their color correcting were making mistakes in color correcting after lunch. They tracked it and it always occurred mid-afternoon after lunch, and they called in a specialist company to come in and figure out what was going on. And it turned out after a lot of study that if the people who worked in that department went out to lunch and wore polarized sunglasses and had caffeine at lunch, that affected their ability to see the color red accurately for 2 to 3 hours after they came back from lunch. So, you know, it turns out what you eat or what light you're exposed to, all of these things can affect how you see color. So, like I said before, our color swatches don't necessarily give a complete picture of what's going to happen when you use those materials in your artwork. So, you know, watercolorists put together these color charts where you're mixing one end of the one side to the other side and you mix it all in between. I spent ages and ages with colored pencils doing all these different color charts, because colored pencils come pre-mixed. You know, there's usually not just one pigment in a colored pencil. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how these different colors were going to mix, and doing a lot of different color wheels, color swatches. I have notebooks and sketchbooks filled with these. My family, of course, knows that I'm crazy. My niece at the time was the only one who understood what I was doing, and sat down and did color swatches with me, which was awfully cute. This is her drawing of her, and I think this is me on the other side. But I have, you know, just sketchbooks filled with all these different color swatches, and I could pick out, let's say, this color here that might match what it was that I was trying to illustrate, but how these two colors would combine with other colors that I might need, it wasn't particularly helpful. And not only that, but I found that I could mix this same color a number of different ways. I thought that maybe instead of doing little tiny boxes, if I did just something, an object, you know, I chose this little pear here to do different color testing and color swatches, that might help me get a better sense of what it was that I would be looking at when I used colored pencils. So I had, you know, setups with analogous colors off the color wheel, you know, colors that, so in this first row, colors that are next to each other on the color wheel versus complementary colors, trying to get a feel for what was a complementary color to this particular orange or green. Then I had, you know, overlaying with white, to see how that affected the different colors. You know, sometimes when you do overlays with colors, it makes a huge difference. Sometimes when you do overlays in colored pencils, it doesn't really make much difference at all. But I still had a lot of trouble with this. So that led me to looking for the entire palette at one time. So I spend a lot of time with botanical subjects. I like to do landscapes in colored pencils, so that brings in architectural elements as well. But when you're working with anything that is botanical, the important thing to know is that Mother Nature does not waste any pigments. And it was interesting, there was a course, a workshop that was being taught about, what was a watercolor workshop on orchids. And we happened to have a botanist in the class who studies orchids. And he got all excited because the way we laid down different color, you know, starting with a yellow and then laying things on top of it. What we didn't paint was exactly what Mother Nature was doing in the real world. So he had a presentation where he had taken all of these layers of pigment cells out of flowers, and he could show that at the bottom was the yellow pigments, and then all of these other pigments within the flower petal were laid one on top of another so that we could look through them. But this means that if there are a lot of different places, if you're looking at something in the natural world, that you can find the rest of your palette. And for me personally, I'm interested in complementary colors because I'm interested in things that will create form, and I'll use complementary colors for shading and shadows and to mix gray. Grays are really important to me, or to mix brown. So one place to look for me is where I can see new growth. You know, roses, citrus trees. There are a lot of plants that when they put out new growth, it has a red color, even though if you're not looking at the new growth, you wouldn't see red anywhere else on the plant. So that tells me if I can match that red color, then I have a color that I can use for shadows. There are other parts of plants that, you know, we're not always fortunate enough to see. This is a puya. It's this huge, massive plant from South America. It has very odd colored flowers, but you can see here the stamens are this bright orange. If I were looking at just the buds or the leaves of the plant, I might think that this is kind of a maroon color that I would try to choose to start mixing colors. But instead, it turns out that this bright orange mixed with the green in colored pencils is what gives me that sort of maroony brown color there. And if I had not seen that flower with the orange, I would have never even thought to try it. Dead and dying things will frequently show you other colors that are there if you're looking at the natural world. So, you know, if you just look at a plant in its prime and its happiest point of the year of growth, you wouldn't see any of these really delightful pinks or yellows. But once things hit hot weather and drought season, and these extra petals start to fade away, or leaves actually on this particular plant, you can start to see these pinks come out. The same with leaves that are fall leaves that are falling off of trees. All of those colors are already there. They're in there all summer. It's just that they're being covered up by the green. So if you can see the fall leaves, you'll know additional colors that you can include in your palette. And then of course, there's all kinds of other things you can do. You know, you can smash things and squeeze them. And we had some asparagus a couple of weeks ago that, you know, we had washed it and chopped it, and it bled a really amazing purple color, which was fascinating to me. So like I said, I'm mostly interested personally in complementary colors and grays just because that works for me. If you want to try some recipes for gray, you know, I know a lot of people who say, oh, you should only mix your greens. You know, there are too many really nice greens out there that are already pre-mixed. And even though I'm fairly obsessive person, I'm also kind of lazy. So I will go to those convenient greens, we call them. You know, I'll mix them with other colors and I don't have any problems using them. But grays, I tend to like to mix. And usually what I do is I will mix a gray based on the other colors in my palette. So you can mix the three primary colors, you know, a yellow, blue, and red. You can mix, you know, a cobalt blue and a burnt umber makes a lovely gray, or an orange with a French ultramarine make a wonderful gray. You can take all of, if you have a subject, you can take all of your local colors, go back to that beautiful gold car that we were looking at. If you mix all of those local colors together that you're using, it will be a gray. It might not be a beautiful gray, but it will definitely be a gray. Homer used a Prussian blue and an iron oxide red, and that was his favorite go-to gray for all of those stormy skies that he used. He was just consistent about that through his different paintings, and there's nothing wrong with that either. We all end up with our favorite go-to color mixes. I've in bold here down at the bottom, I have the handprint.com address. If you are technically inclined, he does rigorous testing of all different types of colors and gets way down into the nitty-gritty of pigments. If you're not so technically inclined, it's also a great website. He has a lot of these, like for instance, this is a PDF that you can download off his website and print out. He has a lot of these that are available for people to print out. He uses watercolors. He doesn't use colored pencil, but I have found that it works equally well for colored pencil as for watercolor. But for instance, on this color wheel, on his color wheel, he starts showing you where actual colors are. And it's fairly straightforward to print one of these out. It's not going to be an exact color match to our colored pencils, but you can start going in and putting, colored pencil swatches and figuring out where these different colors fall, whether it's a cool red or a warm yellow, and how close they are in as far as being a very dark hue or a dark value to lighter. It's a really good map of a color wheel. Your true complementary colors are not only opposite each other across the color wheel, but if you mix two true complementary colors together, they will form a neutral gray. If you put two true complementary colors next to one another, the edges will vibrate and it'll be very difficult to look at. So we've all gotten those holiday flyers around December where they use a red and a green in the printed flyer, and it's a true complement of one another, that red and green, and you can't read the headline for the ad because the edges are vibrating so badly. That's how you know it's a true complementary color. And one way you can remedy that, if you have a subject that's a true complementary color, what you can do is kind of move one of them slightly away from being directly opposite on the color wheel, and then that will tone everything down and enable your viewer to actually look at your artwork. Then there are different types of methods that you can use for underpainting too. So the French grisaille, where you do a value study underneath, and then you put the local colors on top. There's of course the grisaille, and then my French is horrible, brunet or a verde, where you use, instead of using a gray color for that tonal value, you can use a brown or green. I know some people who use the complementary color of their subject. So, that gold car that we were looking at, someone might go in with purple to put in the values of the car and then put the gold color over it. Or for leaves or landscape, that's very green, you might put a red underneath. And then there are a variety of palettes. So I know artists who have their palette, they stick to it, they know how those colors are going to mix up, and they're happy using that forever. I know myself, I tend to create a limited palette of anywhere from 6 to 10 colors for whatever my subject is at hand. Partly because I never have found an art supply that I didn't want to try. I'm sure the manufacturers see me coming and go ka-ching, ka-ching. You can mix absolutely perfect local colors. You can layer colors. There are all different types of ways to create a subject or a place. One of the things, you know, if I'm traveling, like for instance, to the Sonoran Desert, I know what that palette is because I know what those colors are. But I want to kind of wrap up and talk about another subject that we don't usually talk about when we're talking about palettes. What your color palette is for a subject is going to affect how your artwork is scanned. And, you know, nowadays, a lot of times when we submit to exhibitions, we send in scanned artwork, or if we're getting artwork scanned so we can make prints or other things. There are a lot of times that it's terribly difficult to get accurate color from the scan. And this harkens back to the beginning of the presentation when I was talking about the difference between subtractive color and additive color. We're working in subtractive color. We're working with pigments, not colors. And so a lot of times what we scan is going to be very difficult to reproduce accurately to what our artwork is. So some of the things that I recommend, these are watercolor swatches. You can get a group of people together so that you have the maximum number of colored pencils, let's say, and put together a bunch of swatches that you have on 8.5 by 11 or 9 by 12 sheets. So it's relatively inexpensive. And you can have those swatches scanned. And that will tell you what colors are going to have problems. It's not to say, like, for instance, I know French ultramarine blue in watercolor can turn very brown when it's scanned. Now, I do not believe in limiting the palette to what can scan properly, but it's good to know about in advance. And in fact, my scanning services appreciate if I bring in the swatches or my little testing scrap that I use as I'm doing a piece of art, so that they have something small that they can experiment with how to shift the color before doing the artwork. It's something that I highly recommend. Which brings us to our ultimate color mixing exercise. As I wrote on the exercise, this comes from Roland Rees. As an undergraduate, I was astonished to be able to get into his graduate school class. He was teaching a composition class. And after the first couple of assignments, he said, "Oh, you guys don't know anything about color." And here we'd been through all these color theory classes. So he gave this ultimate color mixing exercise and said that if we did it, or if we did even part of it, we would never want for knowing how to mix a color again. So it involves doing a collage. I highly recommend not doing a subject, but then you go through a series of exercises, as I listed out on the sheet, and try to do each of them with your abstract collage as a subject. It's not terribly easy. So here's some different collages that people have done and trying to match them, you know, here in colored pencil. The most important one here is a collage that I did. And usually what I do is I fill up a sketchbook with these and I put the collage on a separate card index card. You want it to be small, trust me, so I can move it along through the sketchbook. But some of these you can test out, some of them you can't. So after doing this one in grayscale, I'm able to slap the collage on a copier and, you know, run a black and white copy to see how close I got. The first time I did this exercise, it turns out that I thought that this green was a bit darker than it actually turned out to be. So I redid it. When you run it off a copier, actually this green and this white are pretty much the same tonal value, which was a surprise to me. I had the green a little bit darker. But I, you know, I was proud of myself that I got this red and blue. Pretty close. It was pretty much an exact match. So interesting things to move forward and try. And I would definitely, it is a lengthy exercise. So, you know, I understand completely if there's some that just aren't interesting and you want to skip, they don't pertain to the type of artwork that you do. I do like, I collect some fun factoids about color just because I do like color. So blue, if you survey everyone in the world, every culture, every language, about a little less than half of them will select blue as their favorite color. If you talk to little kids, blue will usually be their favorite color, which is really interesting to me because blue is the last color word added to all languages. So I find that really interesting. Pepto-Bismol pink is supposed to be a color that suppresses anxiety and anger and violence. So during the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of proposals that the interior of prisons should be painted a solid Pepto-Bismol pink. Personally, I would find that to make me more anxious and angry, but it was a proposal for a while. If you go into a fast food restaurant or a diner or coffee shop, they are usually painted yellow and orange or decorated in yellow and orange. This makes people eat faster, and it means that they can turn over the table faster. If you're intending to lose weight, you might want to consider repainting your kitchen if it's yellow. But a lot of the logos, you know, of fast food restaurants, you'll see use yellow and orange in their logos even. Mummy brown, there's a colored pencil that's kaput. There's a mummy brown watercolor paint. It is a lovely brown color. I have it in both colored pencil and watercolor. It was made of ground up mummies and up until 1964, when they changed it to be made up of artificial dyes. And Tyrian purple was made up of by crushing shellfish, little tiny shellfish. It took 10,000 of them to produce a single gram of dye. So it was a purple that was worn mostly by royalty, but they were left out in the sun to cure. So, and apparently smelled really badly. People used uranium as a pigment. So one thing that I encourage people to do is to go through all of their art supplies and read up on the current standards. There were a lot of art supplies that were banned from, you know, the materials and contents were banned from general public use, but were still okay in art supplies. And it behooves us to do a cleanup of our studios and get rid of all of those. So I've gotten rid of, for instance, all the cadmiums and things like that. Cochineal is a beautiful red color. And for those of us who are in the West and Southwest in Mexico, It grows on the prickly pear cacti. Once red dye number 2 became widely known as a carcinogen, a lot of different food and makeup folks started switching to cochineal because it was a natural red dye. But then Starbucks found that once their customers found out that they were actually drinking insects, it's a scale insect, and there was a fury about that, especially vegans didn't like the idea that they had been unknowingly drinking insects. It was withdrawn from the market. Shields green was very popular in the 19th century and even into the 20th century. It contains arsenic. So if you have any old books on your shelf that have a green binding, you might want to pull them off the shelf and make sure that they are wrapped up in some archival paper and tucked away, because they contain arsenic that can get on your fingers as you read it. We went through and found out that we had a couple of old children's book left over from passed down from grandparents that definitely have those Shields green covers. Oak gall ink is made from the galls on oak trees, and you can still get it. It's a lovely color. And Indian yellow is now made differently from synthetics, but it was originally made from feeding cows mango leaves and having them urinate on a special kind of sand and then collecting the sand. So those are all my weird fun factoids about colors. Any questions? I know I've run through a huge amount of information in a short amount of time, and hopefully it wasn't too boring or tedious. But do you have any questions?
I do. Probably about 15 years ago, I had a detached retina.
Mhm.
And after I got surgery for that, I got cataracts. And this is long before I started into art. And I noticed that my eyes saw different colors. And everybody thought I was nuts. So thank you.
No, you were not nuts. And in fact, I experienced this not too long ago. Apparently, as we get older, it's normal for the vitreous of your eyeball to pull away and detached. And if it happens in an organized manner, like it's supposed to, it goes evenly all the way. But I had, for a lot of us, it can be uneven. So I had one eye that it was pulling on the back of the eyeball for a period of time. And that eye did see color very differently. And I had to look at, and they were worried about it possibly becoming a detached retina. But I had to, keep covering up the bad eye in order. And once I had my palette, then I didn't have to think about it too much. But the color from one eye to another was very different. So no, you were not crazy. And you can go back to all those people and say, see?
I learned so much from this. Thank you so much. I'm going to watch
thank
it
you.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deb, you're on mute.
Sorry. Do you get your pieces scanned online? Like, do you send a file to someone, or do you do it with the exact piece? I'm just trying to figure out a source for getting
Okay.
it done.
So here's the thing. You need to find a scanning service, the person sitting at the machine who will listen to you. And you need to find a scanning service that appreciates your particular art. So it's getting easier, I will say. So there are a bunch of different types of scanners. There's the flatbed scanner that kind of looks essentially like a copier machine, you know, it goes zzzz across and picks up all the artwork. And as colored pencil artists or graphite artists, sometimes you know, the surface is a little bit shiny. And so sometimes you get weird colors from a flatbed scanner because the light reflects off the waxy surface. There's other types of scanners now that they put your artwork in and they vacuum seal it with a piece of glass and tilt it up. And it's essentially a camera that's taking a photo of your artwork, but it has lights all around, color corrected lights, 5,000 degree K, that go all around the border. So it lights your subject evenly, and then it takes a picture of it. The reason that I say, you know, there was one color scanning service that I tried out that everyone just raved about, and I could not get a good scan from them. And it turned out that they were experts at scanning oil paintings. You know, all my plein air painter friends used them, but they weren't good at scanning, you know, very flat 2D art. So they all have their specialty. And the other little known is that you can fine tune a scanner. So you can make it so that it is specific to a particular type of artwork and or a particular range of colors. The thing is, it's so time consuming that they don't want to do that very often. So they're not going to adjust it for your painting and then readjust it for another one. So generally what I do when I'm looking, you know, Sammy's has scanning services, you know, you can find fairly inexpensive ones. Generally what I do is I make up a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that has color swatches of either colors I've had problems with and or colors I use most frequently. And I'll take it to different places and have them scan it so I can, you know, try them out. You know, I show them the different artwork that I do, and then get people who will work with me. A lot of times, you know, for botanical work, if you're color adjusting, red and green are on the opposite sides of the spectrum in color correcting or in Photoshop. So if you adjust the red to be accurate, the green's going to go out of whack and vice versa. So if that happens, they can mask off one and color correct for one and color correct for another. That can get expensive. It depends on what you need it for. And, you know, like I say, if you find an art supply you dearly love, they'll quit manufacturing it. If you find a color scanner you dearly love that understands you, they'll move away. So I am, and it might be something, you know, to do with people in your area. I'm always on the lookout for good color scanning services. So yeah, that's a whole nother piece of the puzzle.
Deb,
So, and sometimes it doesn't matter as much as others. I will say colored pencil art, oil paintings, and gouache tend to be more successful, quicker at getting scans than watercolors and graphite. And so you're lucky. I think it has to do with the opacity. I think all of these color scanners do better with more opaque media, but that's, I'm probably making that up. It's just my gut feeling.
Okay, thank you.
hi Deb.
Hi there. Oh,
Other
I'm a
Deb.
Deb here.
Other than-
Glad to see you. Greg Joy has a comment on scanners. So hold on just a minute. He has an additional note.
Oh, good.
The winter episode of Watercolor Artist has a gentleman who has an article on scanning your artwork.
Oh, good. Thank
And
you.
makes the point that if you go to Kinko's or someplace like that, they can do a good passable job at scanning, but it has to bend. And he uses 300-pound paper. And so it doesn't bend really well for him. So he's got a whole article about scanning it yourself with a home scanner, where you can put it and take segments and take segments of it, and then with Photoshop stitch it together.
Mm.
And as long as you can, cover it, the entire breadth of it with like one or two multiples of the length of your scanning bed.
Okay, I thank you. I'm going to go find that article. I do that frequently. I have an 11 by, well, no, 8.5 by 14 old flatbed scanner that I can stitch things together.
He says it's best to have one where you can take the top off, or you don't have to have the top in place or whatever, and they're available in modest price. So.
And I will say that, yeah, I was going to say a lot of times my cover is not detachable, so that can really get in your way.
Again, it's Winter Watercolor Artist.
Okay, thank you. I'm writing this down.
Thank you. Okay, I did want to make a quick note for the people that are in-house that what we have on the table is the materials to make collages. Take a baggie with
Oh.
the index cards, the glue stick, take a pencil and just collage away. And those of you who actually go through any part of the exercise will have you put your extra ticket in next meeting for another $25 gift card.
And I would love to see anyone that if you do any part of the exercise, I do love looking at them. So
We will make sure you see that. Hold on a minute.
Thank you.
Ellen has a question or comment.
Hi guys. Yeah, I have a quick comment for you guys. So I use a company in LA and they photograph artwork, static medium. I've had great results, especially if we've got large pieces. They're not that expensive. And if you want, they can print. They only deal with artists. They don't do any other form of printing. Another suggestion, having been a scanner operator myself, rather than jump into Photoshop and use your RGB, switch over to CMYK. I actually use it that way from being a scanner operator within the printing industry, and find that it's an easier way to move my colors or adjust them to get that higher green or blue or orange you're trying to go for. It's much easier in my mind, but that's just from my experience, and I'm happy to help anybody who has questions on that or would like some little bit of a tutorial should they need with that exercise themselves. Okay, guys. Thank you.
thank you. And I neglected to say, a scanning operator is an artist. It's a separate art form in its own right, as far as knowing your color mixing and what to do. They are genius. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Comments? I neglected for our art sharing time. It just sort of flew past me. So if we are done with Deb, thank you very much. I could probably sit with you for days. And you better
Thank
hope I
you.
don't figure out where you live, or I will come with supplies and hold you hostage, because I need all of this and I need all of that practice. But thank you very much. It's been very thought-provoking, lots of information I had no clue about. And
Thank you.
does anybody on Zoom want to share their art with us before we do our in-house art share? Dean, I know you're working on something. I could tell. Who did? Oh, Gary.
It was just my, I'm still working on the Convict Lake.
Okay.
So
All right. Can we spotlight him?
So Anyway, that's,
Maybe. Oh, there we go.
oh, did you do it? All right.
Unfortunately, the color's a little bit washed out with these lights. It's
Oh, well, maybe it's just, I'm really bad, but.
no, I've seen it. And
Right.
it's not. Okay.
Anyway,
beautiful.
that's what I've been working on.
Okay. Looking great. Gary, you got something to show us?
Gary.
Gary. Okay, got to give us some video. He's not there. He's gone out to lunch. Okay. Nope. Gary, are you there?
Nope.
Hello. I can't see him. I can't hear him. Well, moving on. Oh, Heather's got something. Yes, no? What are you working on? Okay, gotta unmute. Okay, almost there. Well, I see a little, ooh, it's very colorful, but I can't quite see what it is because we need to spotlight you. Okay, talk, Heather. No mic. Okay. I don't know what's happening, but we'll have to see it. Okay, anybody else? All right. Anybody? Nope. Looks like we're done for in-house. Well, thank you. We had a really good showing on Zoom. I really appreciate you guys showing up. We will be working on a recording and get that to you ASAP. And I know, pardon me? Yeah, we do have that. So hold on, we're going to go ahead and do the, show you guys what we're doing. And hold on. So if you bring your art up and stand on this square, and then I'll hold the microphone and, ooh, neat. This is Sherry Engel. Okay, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Sure.
Very nice.
This is a commission I've been working on for, I don't know, I would say a month or so. Not because it's taken me that long to do it. I just haven't been working on it consistently. But it's not quite completed. The blanket that I've done part of in the front of the dog's face there, it goes all the way around and then also onto his back. There we go. You can kind of see where I've drawn in where I need to go there. But I was really happy to get this because I have some friends that own a restaurant near where I live, and this is their dog, and they wanted me to do something for them because she passed away last year. And they're going to be hanging it in the restaurant with my information to do commissions. And so I'm hoping that I'll get a little bit of work out of it. So I'm putting a lot of time into it to get it right.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh, this is a pastel matte, gray pastel matte. And I use polychromos, Pablo's, and luminance. All three of them were kind of combined for this to get all the colors I wanted. Okay.
Beautiful. Okay. Anyone else? Anybody else? Anybody bring anything? Okay, guess it's me. Okay, I also have a memorial portrait. Got it? It's a little hard to see. A friend lost her dog, and it's really not clear, but lost her dog, and she doesn't know I'm doing this for her. The Christmas before it died, she had taken the picture of the dog sitting in the middle of the Christmas lights, and it's pretty washed out now, but I just thought I'd surprise her with it because she's obviously distraught. And so it's good practice. It's on Fabriano black paper. I started with white And that actually might be a little bit better. Started with white on the black and then started laying the color over it, but it looks a lot more done than it does on screen. And I'm going to mount it on a cradled birch panel and use an illusion frame so that she doesn't have to deal with framing it. And I'm just going to hand it to her in complete form and it'll be done. So that's it for now. All right. Anybody
Very
else? Oh, Betty needs to talk. Betty has been working on, we are trying to think ahead for the 2024 convention. And there's been a suggestion to decorate eggs. I don't know if you guys saw the Explore This. Yeah, Wendy, I cannot pronounce that. Yes, that. Very nice lady. And her first time entering, she actually carved a real egg and then decorated it. And first time enter and first time getting an award. So we already talked about.
It's ceramic. Right now it's porcelain. It's not fired. It's in Greenware State. I have a mold.
She has two sizes of eggs and we've talked about actually decorating those eggs and putting them on a tree or a pedestal or something like that for the 2024 convention. So Betty has the kiln, Betty has the clay. Betty knows how to do it.
I said I'd make them, so
So,
let me know if you want one, if this is a good idea. If not, think something else.
yep. So anyway, that's a possibility for 2024. So, all right, we're good. We're good. Anyone else need to bring up anything? Any questions? Were you here, Greg, for the discussion of the chapter project? Okay, good. All right. Anything else? All right. If you have any questions that you think of later regarding the ultimate color exercise, or you think of something that you want to ask Deb about, just email me and we'll forward it because I'm sure she's very willing and helpful to give information and etc. Right. Okay. I think we're going to end off because the only thing we have to do in-house is do the in-house raffle, correct? Okay. All righty. So we're ending off early. Thank you so much. We'll make sure and get the recording out as soon as possible. Paul brought 2 computers, so we were double insured of making it happen. And I'm glad that we are functional and everybody got to join us. All right. So thank you all. Gonna wave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
And thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent.